When it comes to one-arm handstands, devil's in the details. If you turn or twist your hips a certain way to the wrong direction, or if you time your push wrong, or if your legs are tilted one way or the other, just a few degrees off, basically all these little mistakes are going to add up and bite you in the ass. So today we're going to take a look at two hand balancers that are looking to learn the one-arm handstands. On the surface level, they might look super strong. To you, it might look even perfect. But to the trained eye, there's actually one thing that they're both missing. And this one thing is probably one of the most common mistakes that I see beginner hand balancers make, including myself when I first started. And we're going to get into what that is. But before we get into what that is, please help me out here and hit that like and subscribe button to my channel. And now let's take a look at the videos. Okay, so let's hit play. The first guy here, Tomalo 9772, this is actually a pretty good position. You see his hips or his legs are actually turning to the inside, which is a very, very common beginner mistake. I mean, I still make this mistake to this day if I'm not careful. It's just kind of a natural way of us going into one arm. So you have to just turn the other way on purpose, even though it might not seem like it's natural. You see his right leg here is just turning towards the fence a little bit more. So the good thing to do would be to turn back the other way around. It's going to feel awkward and unnatural in the beginning, but that's pretty much how it's done. Let's keep playing. It's really strong here. And to the left side position, this is actually not as good as a position as the right arm, even though the twist is less pronounced. And I'll explain why later. But overall, very strong. Form is really good. And I believe pretty soon this person will be able to get the one-arm handstand. All right, let's take a look at the next video. In the next video, this is from Bushido Joe, who sent me this clip via Instagram. All right, so in the beginning, he's turning, or leaning over to the left arm. Let's just kind of fast forward a little bit if we can. Okay, let's stop here. So this is the position. Okay, and then let's fast forward to the right side. Okay, all right, I think you have a pretty good idea of what this is. And then let's take a look at, he sent me a bunch of clips. So let's just take a look at all of them, but with a little bit faster speed. Okay, and on the left. Okay, all right. So kind of similar to the last clip, I would say. And let's go with this one. Yeah. Same, pretty much same as before. Let's take a look at his fourth video. Okay, and the next one, which is a side profile view, which is always helpful. Looks pretty good. Again, really strong hand balancer. And the technique is pretty good. And I'll explain what he needs to improve on. And this is actually the best clip I've seen from him. And let's look at the last one, which I think he's doing a full position, which is the candle. So this is the position. It's a little bit harder to get into it versus the straddle. Okay, all right. So let's take a look at what he needs to improve on, or both of them. All right, so with this clip here, you see there's a similarity with this alignment. And let's just pull up a random one from Bushido Joe and this alignment. And the similarity is that the opposite hip is not stacked on top of the working shoulder. So when you're balancing on one arm, or when you're trying to get into the one arm handstand, you want to swing the legs more over to the balancing arm. So in this aspect with Tomalo, he's balancing on the left arm. So that means he would swing the right leg a little bit higher and the left leg a little bit lower. So the opposite hip can be aligned on top of the left arm, because now the left arm is where your center of gravity is. So you want your hips to reflect that reality as well. Whereas in this hip position, it's more of a two-arm, like if I were to draw his center of gravity here, it would be right here, like right between his arms. But if he would have to make his center of gravity on his left arm, then he would have to tilt his right hip more over to the left. And same with Bushido Joe here. You see that his left hip is still basically on the two-arm position, whereas if he wants to go more on the one arm, he would need to lift the left leg higher, drop the right leg lower, and bring the opposite hip on top of the right arm. So if you compare this position to the one that I said was the best, I don't know why I can't enlarge this one, but okay, there we go. Okay, so let's compare them side by side, because you might not notice the difference, but there's actually a huge difference here. You see this one where his left leg is a little bit higher, and then his hip is less sliding to the right side and is way more stacked. You see on the left-hand side, this clip here, he's kind of just pushing his butt, his hips over to his right. Whereas on this clip here, his legs are tilting over and his hips are tilted right on top of the right arm. It is still not perfect by any sense of the imagination, but you can see the difference between this clip here, where he's leaning with, and this as well is even more obvious here, where he's leaning his hips over and he's turning his legs as well. Whereas in this clip, he's more a parallel position versus the pushing of the butt out. So in simplistic terms, on the left, his butt is pushing out, and then his legs are kind of going into the figa position, where his right leg and his left leg is almost closer to the camera. Whereas on this clip on the right hand side, his hips are more neutral, it's more flat, his legs are more flat, and he can basically stack his body weight on top of his right arm a lot more. So this is a common mistake that a lot of hand balancers make when they're learning one-arm handstand, is that when they're tilting their legs over to the side, they're basically still on two arms in terms of the weight distribution. So what you really want to do is to think about the top leg. When you lift the legs over to the side, think about lifting the top leg a little bit more so that you can get the weight of the top hip to be over the shoulder. Now, if your legs are a little bit lower, so let's say your legs are more piked, then it would be harder and not as obvious to stack the weight on top of the opposite hip, because there's a chance of flagging, there's a chance of an arch back. It's just not going to be as stacked of a line as you can get. And there's also a tendency of sticking your butt out as well, which was the thing that was happening to Bushido Joe and also a bunch of hand balancers that I know, including myself, that we will do in the beginning, and even sometimes when you're tired, is to start arching and start flagging, and then the weight becomes a lot less obvious as to where to stack it on top. So you want to think about your legs and your hips as one unit, and you want them to be stacked on top of the working arm. So in a sense, when it's in good alignment, you want to think about that as a neutral hip, neutral legs, because they're just stacked and straight. And when it's sliding, which was kind of what happened to Bushido Joe, and also the first clip, was when you're sticking the butt out more to the side, but the legs kind of remain in the middle. So you want to think about that as a -1. If neutral is 0, that is -1. And the opposite end of that spectrum is if you're flagging. So flagging is the opposite of sliding, which means that your legs are going too far over and then you're bending your hips, which I see a lot as well with beginner hand balancers, especially with the ones with more open hips. So you want to think about that as a +1. So you don't want to be either -1 or +1. You want to be somewhere in the middle, which is 0. So in Bushido Joe and Tomalo's case, what I would recommend is to lift the top leg a little bit more and to get into the position a little bit slower so you can feel the weight as you're leaning over to the side. Something you have to look for is if your legs are flat. Then it's just a lot easier to track your body and your weight going to the side rather than just one part of your body, your hips, going to the side and even turning and twisting. So in the beginning, I would say keeping your legs just as high as you can into a V and then tilting directly to the side, making sure you're not twisting or turning. That would be an easy way to fix this problem. And while you can definitely still do a one arm with a sliding hip, it's just not going to look as pretty and it's not going to be as consistent of a hold because your legs and your hips will be turning constantly and it's just going to be really hard to manage and keep track where that weight is, especially in the beginning where you're not even that strong in that position yet. So let me know what you guys think. If you also want to get your handstand form checked out, let me know in the comments. Send me a video via YouTube or Instagram and I'll break it down right here on YouTube. And before we go again, please hit that like and subscribe button. Appreciate all your help and support. Until next time, bye-bye.